Okay, so we're going to talk about IMSR data, the Incident Management Situation Report, and you're getting a double whammy, a little bit of me and a little bit of something I'm super interested to hear about following me with Aaron and who's going to talk about another IMSR data set, but I'm going to talk about the Incident Locations data set, which we also call the IMSR map data set. All right, so I'm going to go through this all pretty quick because I want to leave plenty of time for Aaron. But you know, there's some things to note about the IMSR. Most of us have been looking at this for decades, but you know, it's got some sections on it. But this data set I'm going to talk to you about really pertains to kind of the middle part, which is those GAC components to the IMSR, and particularly what's in the tables, the GAC tables, where each incident or each complex gets a row in a table with a little bit of data. So because we're going to talk about rows, I want to throw out a quick quiz. How many rows in this IMSR that's displayed would you expect to see? That is to say, how many incidents having rows and tables? Save you the anguish. The answer is 13. So you got to know how to do NIC Intel math. But basically, the number of fires contained, even if they're contained, they get a record for that day. They're going to fall off the IMSR. Of course, the uncontained fires, but we also have those fires that are being managed for strategies other than containment. They're kind of listed below that header. And so if you add uncontained and contained plus what we call the comp fires, that's how many rows you get. So that's how many records we would expect to see, or how many dots on a map we would expect to see. Quick history lesson on the IMSR. So, you know, NIC Intel's got digital records that date back to 1990. I was fighting fires 1987, and I kind of remember fighting over that paper copy of something that we wanted to read ban. So I think there was an IMSR or something like that that predated 1990, but just in terms of actual records, that's as far back as we go. It turns out the first record that we've got is from April 16th, 1990. So we're about to have the 35th birthday, I think, of the IMSR, at least a digital version of that. I went back and tried to figure out how many IMSRs have been issued to date. I think there's about 6,600 of those. And I told my buddies here in Intel, I think we should try to measure that in megatons of emotional energy, because you can hear Megan Kephart laughing. Kara Stringer's got some stories too, but you know, each one of those has been it's a bit of an anguish and a big effort to get published. And there really hasn't been a lot of change over the last 10 years. The format's kind of stabilized, and we haven't seen a lot of variance in that. There is a NIC webpage that has the IMSRs. It's a little confusing to me. It's not NIC Intel's webpage, but rather the incident information webpage. So you can get to old IMSRs from that. Aaron's going to talk to you about other ways that historic IMSR data has been compiled. So, you know, the IMSR's had a map that's accompanied it since about 2002, as near as I can tell. That map came into existence because the NIC Intel would produce a small text file, comma delimited text file, that would list all those incidents that were in rows on the IMSR, and then that would be scooped up by the Forest Service's Remote Sensing Application Center, the RTAC, and they produced a map. And it was, you know, it's a map, so it's spatial, but it was kind of interactive in a way. You could click on a dot, not initially, but after a few years, there was a capability where you could click on a dot and a little pop-up box would come up and it would offer some more information. And they were scraping the PDF IMSR to get that information. So it was not a super reliable and a pretty involved process. But it, you know, was far from what we would consider an interactive spatial data set today. The kinds of information that were in that were pretty limited. You know, it didn't have the narratives, you know, just the lat long and the fire name, size, whether it was contained, whether it had a team, and we didn't even add the team information until 2006, as near as I can tell. And there's always some stuff in that header between the commas that, you know, even those of us that have been around a long time have kind of wondered, like, what is that? But, you know, don't take it out. So that's the RTAC IMSR map. So this is kind of what it evolved to look like. It didn't change a lot over the years. The IMSR itself gets a lot of views, you know, thousands and thousands of views over the course of a year. We never really knew how much traffic the map got, and we didn't really link directly to the map from the IMSR, so we didn't actually, lead users by the nose to it. They did produce a KMZ, so that popped up in other places, other applications that wanted to display IMSR points could use some of the products that came out of the RTAC. All right, so in 2021, a message kind of alarmingly popped up on RTAC's website that said, we're not going to do the active fire mapping thing anymore because we really like firms and we're supporting them, and we really do like firms. But it basically was the writing on the wall that IMSR map product was basically headed for the grave. So Nick Intel kind of began working on what Plan B might be. Some folks kind of came to bail us out, specifically the Julie Osterkamp here at the BLM NIFC GIS specialist. She kind of opened the doors and led us to the BLM's National Operations Center that has, some real good expertise, particularly with spatial data. And then because we were talking about a data set, we went and had conversations with our own data management program, and specifically Emmy Harbo proved to be pretty helpful in all of that. So in January of last year, all of a sudden the IMSR had a link for the IMSR map. That first couple of IMSRs didn't have anything to put on the map because there was no incidents listed, but we were officially on the map, so to speak. And similarly on the web page, there was and still is a link to take people to the IMSR map. There is a web page that has an embedded viewer for that IMSR map that the BLM NOC developed for us. That viewers, gets the job done. It's not super interactive, but it provides a spatial view, and users can zoom in and they can see the tabular data below that. But the map itself was built in AGOL using the web experience tool. So that web experience is hosted on the NIFC AGOL, NIFC org AGOL. If you have that link and you go, it's a little more interactive, and you can see the records. I think you can even download records from here. So it's pretty snazzy compared to what we've had. We're finally in the modern era. So the large fire text file, as we noted, it really hasn't changed a lot over the years, but here's a fresh version of that. So it's basically just got a few data fields, not everything that's, talked about for an incident on the IMSR. It doesn't have the narratives and some other information, but it's got this basic information on that. You can see that those are produced early in the morning as Nick Intel's getting ready to publish the IMSR. It's worth noting that the large fire text file does not necessarily pertain to large fires, because if you have a team assigned to a 50-acre fire, you're going to make it on the IMSR. It's not necessarily fires, because we have all hazard incidents that make it on the IMSR, and it's a spreadsheet, so it's no longer a text file. But we still call it the large fire text file because we've been calling it that since 2002. So the NOC built some scripts that read up that spreadsheet to produce that data file that goes into the web experience. I think they sweep it like at 7:53 a.m. We don't do it right at 7:30 when the IMSR publishes, because it takes a little bit of time to put the spreadsheet together. That's kind of lower priority business versus just getting the IMSR itself out. And then, we catch errors, things get left off or something gets in there that's not quite right. So that spreadsheet can be updated throughout the day, typically not after mid-morning. If it's wrong at that point. But they do come and make periodic sweeps to see if there's fresher data, and then that would show up in the web experience. So there's quite a bit of discussion leading up to this about, did we really want another data set, and would it be authoritative? So I won't go into all these in great detail, but, the bottom line for the cons was, it's work. Nick Intel's really busy. So having kind of a even more widely consumed product with some scrutiny on it, puts Nick in Intel in a tougher position that they have always had. The stuff on the IMSR mostly comes from the 209, and that is authoritative. I mean, that's an IC signature, so we really want to put another data set out there that pretends to trump something as official as the ICS 209 data. And then there's just, a whole bunch of baggage that comes with this. Like if the data doesn't match, which is kind of an argument for, then people are going to ask, why doesn't it match? And then you got to explain it. And then there's, data standards to develop, and somebody has to be the steward, and we got to deal with records management. So there's just a lot of reasons why there's, maybe a case not to do this. But there was a pretty good case to do it. So first of all, in the modern era, we really wanted a spatial component to, continue at least after RSAC, GTAC, or GO, as they're called now, discontinued that kind of limited map that they had. Intel's been doing the large fire text file every day since 2002. It just really wasn't like officially official. And then importantly, sometimes the IMSR doesn't match what's on the 209. So people name fires after things that are inappropriate or have a brand name in them or a person's name in them. So we don't want that going out on the most widely consumed document in all of the predictive services community. Nick Intel's privy to better IMT or mobilization information. People do the 209s and the team leaves, or the team's busy doing other things and stuff just gets in there that doesn't get updated. It says that there's extreme fire behavior when it's raining, or that there's structures threatened when, everybody's been repopulated. So, just kind of the red face test to try to ensure, even if the 209 has it officially, that we present what we know to be the best information. And frequently the location coordinates are screwed up. So when we plot those things on the map just using 209 data, those fires may not even show up in the right state, or they could be in the ocean, or they could be the centroid of a complex, which puts it in a funny spot. So sometimes we have to fix those locations. I think the most important case, though, for the IMSR data to kind of stand alone is that there's just a lot of human judgment that helps take that 209 data, which is presumably significant fire occurrence, but that judgment helps us really affirm that it's significant. So it's easy to get on the IMSR. It's not so easy to get off, and frequently that requires somebody to exercise some judgment. So just having a 209 does not necessarily mean the incident was significant when it had the 209, but I believe everything that stays on the IMSR is probably deemed significant. And then finally, with that IMSR data set, we can kind of link to some other things. We can go back upstream into Irwin and get operational data. We can follow it downstream into Inform and get final fire report data. We can go right to the IMSR itself in the case of historic incidents and see what the narratives have to say. And probably the most important thing is it provides a source for other applications like EGP that want to, or firms that want to display just the IMSR fires. So this is what the records look like that are currently used for that IMSR map locations data. So, it's got information here that kind of affects how it's displayed, what kind of team types and things like that. They've added some value. They've added some information that's not in the IMSR, like the Irwin ID, which is kind of your key to the universe, and the unique fire identifier, similarly important. In fact, that's how we get to the Irwin ID. It's got the information about what 209 was the initial source of information and discovery date and time. And then it's got some attribution that's really important. It's got the IMSR post date, because we're going to have multiple records for each incident if it appears on the IMSR more than once. But most cleverly, it assigns an attribute that tells you where in the progression of the IMSRs that particular record resides. So it could be the only record that ever appeared on the IMSR. It was the so-called one and done, made one appearance, and it was never heard of again because it was 100% contained, perhaps on that initial 209, or for fires that show up on multiple IMSRs. Once we have some continuity in the records, we can figure out when was the first appearance, what were all the updates, those middle appearances, and what was definitively the last appearance. So those things, first, mid, and last, we can't really know unless we have multiple IMSRs to look at. And some things like last, we may not even really know that with some assurance until, say, at the end of the calendar year. So that data set now lives on NIFC Open Data. These are publicly accessible. You don't need a login. These are filtered subsets. They're not all the records. So under the 2025 Wildland Fires tile, you can go get the current IMSR's data set. Those are pretty small. There's only 11 records in that for today. It makes some assumptions. If there's a new incident, first time on the IMSR, we're just gonna assume it's the only because we don't have anything to compare it with. Or if it's previously shown, we're going to assume that today is the last day because, again, we don't have anything to compare with. So it's kind of an ephemeral data set. Under the historical wildland fires, there's 2 data sets currently available. I think one of them might be misfiled, but you can get the final occurrence, so the last IMSR appearance for records, and they've compiled that data set going back to 2004. So it's a pretty robust historical data set. And then there's another one that has the final occurrence for fires from the year to date, and I'm guessing maybe that should be in the 2025 bucket. And then if you're special enough, you have to have permission, but you can get to the whole enchilada. So it's not these public-facing data sets, but obviously there's the big data set that has all those firsts, mids, lasts, and onlys for all of the IMSR records dating all the way back to 2004. So having all this, so what? What can we do with that? Well, I think just the IMSR itself is kind of a good way to gauge busyness nationally. For individual incidents with this data set, we can figure out when was the first time it had appeared on the IMSR and the last time it appeared on the IMSR, and what was that kind of last set of data that got a lot of eyes on it. It might not be the final report data, but the last time people were seeing it on the IMSR, what was the acreage or some of the other information that goes with that. We can use that data from the data set to go back and find narratives. And then I just think the number of times that an incident appears on the IMSR is probably an indicator of how significant it was. So if it appeared 45 days in a row, that was probably a pretty significant fire. We can also go look at things then by date, see which of the days were the busiest, just in terms of overall IMSR records. And then we can summarize that data for any given day to see, for example, how many teams by type or how many acres were accounted for in the previous day's 209s. And then extending that out across multiple days, we can see which years or months had the most IMSRs or the least IMSRs. We can look for things like peaks and thresholds, for example, when all 10 of the GACs first showed up in a given year on the IMSR and how those things perhaps trended over time. And then, as we're going to talk about here, if I'll just shut up, we can tie this to other summary data sets. So this is an example of a dashboard that's built off that total data set. I'm not going to get into that, but sky's the limit essentially. And kind of closing out here, there's just a lot of things that a lot of folks that have really helped us along the way. So of course, Nick Intel's been doing this since the very beginning, and the RSAC, GTAC, and Go team, particularly Brad Quayle, they were really helpful for those 20 years that they provided support. The Nick Elves, Intel Elves, Megan, Scott, and Terry, they're the ones that keep the plates spinning every day. Julio was really helpful to kind of help figure out what to do once that RTAC, GTAC map went away. And then Rochelle and Emmy helped us, figure out, is this authoritative and do we need to have some standards? Some of that work I think is still unresolved. And then most importantly, those folks at the NOC, Patrick and his team, IFR, really did, I think, most of the heavy lifting. And Dave's been really helpful and hung in there with us to get this product launched. That's all I've got, and I will now yield the floor to Erin.
Thanks, Steve. Can I get sharing power as well?
Yeah.
So Steve set me up really well. For those of you on the call who don't know me, I'm Erin Belleville. I'm a research scientist at Rocky Mount Research Station, and I use a lot of this data, and I have been really enjoying being on when I can over the past 3 days. We did want to take this time to essentially just let you guys know about a data set that we created in the course of our research, and I'm going to share my screen. Hang on. There it is. All right. And we're calling this the IMSR scraped data set because I don't have a better name for it, I guess. So this is something that I started working on a while back. So, sorry, it won't change. There we go. So Steve set us up well. I think everyone's really familiar with the IMSR data set, and particularly the IMSR PDFs that are available on the NIFC webpage. History of this data set, or this compilation of this data set, is in about 2014. I wanted to get a history of preparedness levels, and I needed more than just national, because there is a nice Excel file that gives you the national preparedness level for every day going back to 1990. but there was nothing that I could find at the time that had all the regional preparedness levels. And then as I was trying to scrape that, my first attempt went poorly. The libraries were not as well set up as they are now to actually scrape PDFs and turn them into text files. So it ended up being something that I mostly did by hand. And I did that for hand by years. And it was something that people would ask me about. They'd be like, hey, that PL spreadsheet you keep, can I get a hold of that? And I started tracking more than just the national and regional pre-Ls. I started tracking those full blocks of information, right? The national block and the regional blocks. And about 2021, we got some folks from CSU involved, and the libraries for PDFs were much better, and we were actually able to create a tool that essentially scrapes everything off the official PDF and puts it into a spreadsheet so that people can really use it for, particularly for historical context. It's really useful. The Excel sheets, this is the key thing for you guys. The Excel, and I can put these in the chat. The Excel sheets that have the IMSR scraped data from 2007 to 2024 are available on Figshare, and I'll put that there. There's a paper that describes the data set and the processing steps, so there was some cleaning that got done as we pulled things out. And there's also a publicly available, the tool we built is available. So you can actually, if you want like 2025 and you want half the year, we try to update this yearly, but if you want half the year, you can go to Zenodo and pull down the tool and just pull down all the PDFs and run the tool yourself, and it'll put stuff in a spreadsheet for you. If you want this data set and you go to Figshare, this is what you're going to see. You want the box in red. This is the one Excel sheet that makes everything easy. And then I'll just tell you that really quickly. When you open the Excel spreadsheet, what you're going to see is 5 different Excel files, or 5 different spreadsheets, sorry. One is the metadata that tells you for each, like what's the field name, what's the description, and data type, to make it really easy to figure out exactly what you're looking at. The National Fire Activity tab is the spreadsheet version of the National Fire Activity block here. The GAC activity tab, it's the GAC activity block. So you get regional preparedness level. If a region is missing, it will just not be in the spreadsheet. We do not try to fill in missing data with this. We are just providing people with what's on the sheet, the PDF, that day. The wildfire activity tab pulls all of the data that Steve just talked about. It pulls the version that's on the spreadsheet. I generally send people to the 209s if they're interested in this. The only thing that we tend to use this for is that this actually does give you a sense of where the fire landed priority-wise with how the GAC prioritized that fire. And so we have used it for that. If you do link these to the 209, because this came up yesterday when Lise was talking, when we link this back to the 209, you can either use the 209s and link via date and just essentially say, okay, what was the preparedness level on any given day for this fire? That's the straight date link. If you want to actually link this wildfire activity table to the 209s, often linking by date is really problematic. You have to link by the stuff that's in the fields, because a lot of times there is a lag between what gets published. Anyways, we've figured most of that out. We may include that in the next version of the 209s. And then the active incident resource summary, this table has been available on the IMSR since 2015. And so if you want the resource summary by geographic area, you can also get that in this table. And as far as like things we can do with it and why I think this is useful, this hadn't really been compiled in an easy to use way that I knew of before. I think there did end up being a little bit of duplication, but this is an easy way to get at it at this point, and we were able to finish it. I like to be able to see, like Steve was talking about, like how busy are we this year? Well, what you're looking at here is for every year, 2017 to 2024, tells you, according to the active resource summary, how many people were on the ground on mostly large fires. I know some IA gets in here. And then what was the preparedness level? The preparedness level is the red, yellow, orange dot at the top. That's what the national preparedness level was that day. And the bars just show you who was on the ground and what region they were in. This was prepared for Forest Service, so it was region, not, I used region, not GAC, but it's really GAC. If you want that, like I said, I will put that in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions, and I bet Steve may have some questions too.
Aaron, those are awesome charts. Like those graphs, being able to see that way, it's, you know, we're all sitting busy that it's, those visualizations are always super handy to have, and building those types of patterns is great. I was wondering, you know, with the IMSR map data set that Steve was talking about, they included the Irwin IDs on there. Have you thought about being able to include the Irwin IDs somehow to be able to facilitate linking back to the records easier?
I am working with Lise and Karen. And so if we do go forward and include the scraped IMSR in the ICS 209 next download version, yes, the Irwin ID will be will become a part of the wildfire record, because that will be because of the way we've linked it all together.
And then I don't know, Steve, Julio, others, like, is there any sense of like being able to link that to the fodder in form? I mean, it feels like there's kind of some opportunity there.
The Irwin ID using the Inform API can actually pull down the entire fodder record, or a good majority of the information. So I'll throw that API link into the chat.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like this is getting us so much closer to like really being able to access the whole picture of data. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, and I was going to say, because IMSR is built from 209 data, they always have an Irwin ID.
Right.
So, you know, we do have some records in Inform that don't have an Irwin ID because they were bulk uploaded. But you know, this is a subset that always has an Irwin ID. So you can go from the Irwin ID to Inform and get to the final fire report.
Yeah.
And I do think using Steve's data may give us some shortcuts.
Yeah.
As we start linking. So, but yeah, it's really useful for research. It's a nice shortcut for people who just want to know things about, like, I just want to have a sense of like where we are in the season and where we've been in past seasons. How busy are we? How many large fires have we seen? It's just a really useful data set for providing context in comparison with previous fire seasons I've found. And it's a really useful communication tool.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, you know, it's just helpful to be able to see the information different ways. You can see where things line up and where things don't line up, right? And I think that when we think about data management, right, so much of what we do, and why Gabriella was, you know, is excited about metadata and the documentation, right? Like we have to get that stuff lined out. We have to understand things well enough to be able to describe them to other people as to why the data is the same or different. And that's always the hardest part, is getting clarity about why there are legitimate differences and how we can help people understand that. Laura?
I was just going to mention to Erin, but then she made that comment. That's that question about where we are in the season compared to other seasons. We couldn't really answer well with our historical data, because it was a report at the end of the year and it was kind of a snapshot. It wasn't that 209 across the season data that you just showed in that chart, which is awesome.
Yeah, and for myself, I've actually done some hand tracking or some mid-season tracking where I run the tool mid-season so that I can actually see like real time where we're at and what it looks like. Because each year's a little different, but also you can find years where like, whoa, we look a lot like 2017 this year. Yeah.
Yeah, Emmy and I were just commiserating that, you know, man, those graphs would have been So nice to have put in IDME if we had it, so. Yeah.
So would the thought be when we're linking these data sets to maybe be able to show the PL levels and some of the resources back into the IMSR incident locations for the historical data? Steve?
Say that again, Emmy.
Well, I'm wondering if with linking, like, are we thinking of maybe bringing in Erin's PL levels and things that she's collected into the IMSR incident locations view from like the final occurrence historical stuff?
I'd say now we probably aren't talking about expanding that IMSR map location data set in terms of the elements. I mean, it's a pretty heavy lift as it is.
Yeah.
But I do think that an ancillary data set to go with, like IFR's built this dashboard. It's really cool, man. Every time I go to that thing, I'm just like, I mean, I can't get away from it because it just,
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So I think the ancillary but coupled data set, has IMSR publication date, for example, or links to the constituent records. Yeah, I think that would just, that's what we've been needing for a long time to kind of complete the business analytics for decision support, or, just kind of filling in useful trivia.
Yeah. This is, Steve, thanks for suggesting this update, because I think it's really helpful for people to see things, right? And even though, it's what do they call it? Oh, I can't think of the phrase that people use, but like there's synergy in that, this idea arose in multiple places at the same time, right? And so that to me just always indicates that the time is relevant for this type of information to be looked at. And so we have the opportunity to look at it from some different angles. Now we can bring things together and work together to continue to mature, right? And so I love that kind of crowdsourcing of how we look at and understand and assess our data. So good stuff, everyone.
Thanks all. I'm going to send my stuff to Don, so he's going to post it and you will all have those links.
Awesome.
And I did the same.
Perfect. Yeah, all of you presenters, if you can send stuff to Don, that would be great. And then we'll get it posted, as he's been pretty much editing on the fly. So he does such a good job with keeping track of these recordings. So, all right. So next is IQCS. So we got a little bit of a hint about that this morning when John was talking about fire code. So I don't know if Shannon or
I am here. Hello.
Awesome. Hi.
So don't have a PowerPoint, but I was just gonna, if I can share, I was gonna just kind of show a little of the new application. And so that people can kind of see. And similarly to fire code, because all our applications were stabilized in Apex, they have a similar look and feel to them, which I think in the end will be very helpful for the users. So current state, the new IQCS 2.0 or IQCSx is currently being tested by the regional or by the bureau leads. And in a couple weeks, we're going to put it out to the regional managers and expand the testing area. We are looking to go live with IQCSx after fire season, so sometime in the fall. And we just had our IQCS CMB today, so that's why I haven't been on much today with this. But we're, great things are happening. The CMB board is super happy with where we're at with the new application. So I'm right now, I'm just in the responder area And I'm gonna do a search for Nonaman because he has a lot of records. And I am his account manager, so it takes a minute to bring it up. But so yeah, I mean, everything is very intuitive, way more than the old system. I haven't been playing in it too much and got in here this morning and started playing and our plan for training is going to be that we are going to make some videos and start getting some training out to folks and then also expand the testing. So here's Nonaman, and if I go into his record to edit, what's cool is that you can see everything from one screen now instead of having to go to, so you can see this is John's experience, which he has a lot. But you know, so everything is super easy. You can add experience. You can go to different records. If you go to print the master record now or the qual card, it actually opens another screen. And so they're still working on the qual card print aspect of it, but basically this is kind of what it looks like now, or you can see the master record, which shows everything. But yeah, we're coming along really well with IQCS and super excited. Michael Pena did announce to the group today that he is taking the DRP. So I will be back in the saddle trying to get caught up and be a lot more, active with IQCS than I have been lately. So yeah, I guess that's the world we're kind of living in right now, is losing people and not being able to replace folks, at least at the moment. So I don't know if there's anything specific you want me to go through, but I just thought I would show at least kind of the look and feel of what the new application is going to be. And again, it's way more intuitive and easy to use than the old 20-year-old system. So we're super excited. We've come a long way, and almost all our applications now are refreshed over to Apex, and of course IQCS was our largest application, and it's been a couple of years in the making, but things are going good. So I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't have a half an hour's worth of stuff, but if anybody has questions or wants to know anything, I'm happy to try to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the same thing applies to when John was showing us fire code. Like it just is amazing how much cleaner and more intuitive these X products are, and super easy for people to get the information, get it in and get it out, right? And I really appreciate you guys have been really pushing the envelope on making that data available without having to have a login. And that's, I think, really an important maturation of our data management.
Right. And we will have a self-service feature that we haven't ever had in the past. So users will be able to go in and actually change their basic information. They won't be able to give competencies or anything like that, but they will be able to change some basic information, upload training documents or other things that are pertinent to their qualifications. So we will have, in the past with PeopleSoft, we had to pay for every license, for every responder, for every person. And so now, of course, we're not going to have that model. And so we will be able to give folks a lot more access to their data and be able to print their master records if they want to on their own and stuff like that, which will alleviate a lot for the training officers. They won't have to do everything for folks. So yeah, it's super exciting. And the IQCS Change Management Board, they're one of the best, I think, I've ever worked with. We have good representation from every agency. We did bring on the Department of Energy this last year, so they are on board as well. We have a lot of folks, but we get good input, and the product owners have been helping with the development, and they're very involved. And so it just makes for a better product. And so, yeah.
How are you guys, how are you feeling about the LMS integration with Irwin?
So, yeah, we were talking about that today when I pinged you. And so I think things are going to go, they're going good. We do want to set up a meeting with Rick and the change management board and just kind of talk through some of the things that we see, because when we built IQCSx, we specifically said that IQCS, as if I can talk, IQCSx was not going to be a learning program anymore. We are tracking things, but only that pertain to the qualifications of a person. So we're not going to do anything to do with training. We're not going to, nominate training or anything like that in the new one. So we are going to be very dependent upon our connection to the learning management portal so that we can bring the information over. But the testing that we've done so far is going good. So we're very hopeful, and also, we have to work. We're trying to use EDG and all the other sources for data. Like, we will have an API to Unit ID for the new IQCSx. We're going to pull data from the sources where it's authoritative. And so, yeah, it's going to be so much more accurate and clean data, I feel like, if we can make all those connections. So
That's awesome, Shannon. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this? I hope that if you have an opportunity to test, it sounds like that window is still open, and you guys take some time and do that. I mean, it looks like there's some good enhancements, and you want to be familiar with it.
yeah, and so the agency leads are putting together expanded lists for testers. So certainly reach out to your agency lead if you'd like to get in and do some testing, because I know, like with fire code, we've had a little bit of a struggle getting people to do testing, and certainly since we're going live next week, when you see it all the time and you're in it all the time, it's hard to find bugs that maybe other people would find by going in and doing things. So we certainly would love to get an expanded group of testers. So
Good.
right. Quit sharing then.
Well, thanks, Shannon. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.